You know, we're in the midst of a pretty horrific budget crisis in New Jersey. I came into a $2.2 billion budget gap for this fiscal year 10, ending June 30th. Had to take quick executive action in the first 2 weeks to freeze $2.2 billion in funding to bring John Corzine's bloated budget into balance for this year. And we have a $10.7 billion budget deficit looming for fiscal 11 on a $29 billion budget. This is years of mismanagement, overtaxation, overregulation, and just runaway spending on the part of the state of New Jersey and our local municipalities and school boards that have contributed to this. And I bring it up just to let you know that because of the scope of that problem, we've had a number of invitations for us to come out and start to tell New Jersey's story at different places around the country. And Rich Bagger, my chief of staff, who's here with me tonight, and I have just, steadfastly refused them, not because we're not interested in doing it, but because, we both really believe that my focus should be on staying at home through the end of the fiscal year to get this budget passed on June 30th with no tax increases on the people of the state of New Jersey. And we have proposed a budget that balances that, makes $10.7 billion in cuts without any tax increases on the people of New Jersey. And so we need to fight to get that passed. They would say to me all the time, your stump speech is good, you're doing really well, but man, when you talk about that education portion of it, that's where you're most passionate. And they were right, because that's the thing to me that once we straighten out New Jersey's fiscal problems, that's one thing. But New Jersey's fiscal problems will never be fixed in the long term if we don't fix our educational system. We believe so passionately about what this organization stands for and what all of you individually are doing in your individual states around the country to try to make educational choice a reality across America. And in New Jersey, let me say this, with a teachers union that collects $130 million in dues a year from its 200,000 members across our state, in a state that has been dominated politically by a state NJEA. In every way, an interest group can dominate a legislature and a series of governors. If we can make this happen in New Jersey over the course of the next 4 years, there is no excuse for anyone anywhere not to get this done. We're going to lead the way. Because our basic principle is this, and I know this is yours. Parents and children deserve a choice. Now, this is a very, very simple, straightforward principle that you would think, in the abstract, that no one could disagree with. But let's not stop there. Let's add the layer onto it that parents and children who are being failed by a public school system whose costs are exorbitant and whose results are insulting deserve a choice. We know that there's over 5 million children trapped in over 10,000 failing public schools around America, and I use the word trapped and I use it directly. They are trapped by an educational bureaucracy. They are trapped by a selfish, self-interested, greedy school union that cares more about putting money in their own pocket and in the pockets of members than they care about educating our most vulnerable and needy children around the country. And by those children, I mean very clearly, as you know, more than 50% of those children that we're talking about are in our largest cities, and they do not graduate. 50% of the children in our largest cities in America never graduate from high school. Now, in New Jersey, in the city of Newark, we are expending $24,000 per pupil in public money for an absolutely disgraceful public education system, one that should embarrass our entire state. But because my predecessor was in the pocket of the teachers union, yeah, he was. I watched it. And that's why they spent $3 million last fall on negative campaign ads against me, because they knew that I was going to stand for one simple thing. One simple thing. Our children deserve the very best education they can get, no matter who is giving it to them. And it should not be restricted to public school teachers in a public school union that cares more about how much they're paying for their health insurance than they care about whether our kids in our cities are graduating. That's disgraceful. There is an outstanding charter school. There's a number of outstanding charter schools in the city of Newark, but there is one in particular called the Robert Treat Academy. And if you've ever been a witness, either on TV or on film or in person, to the lottery that's conducted for admission to the Robert Treat Academy, the Robert Treat Academy has 4,000 children on the waiting list. 4,000 children on the waiting list. And you watch the lottery in the gymnasium at the Robert Treat Academy, and you watch the parents who have their number picked out of that barrel jump and yell and scream for joy. The joy that only a parent can feel when they have realized that their child now has a limitless future. And then you watch the children and their parents when the last ticket is picked out of the barrel and their number was not selected. And you see children crying and parents sobbing, literally sobbing. And I was first acquainted with this, not at one of the lotteries, but at an event at Robert Treat where I met one of the parents of a student there who was in the 3rd grade. And I asked the mother about her experience so far at Robert Treat Academy. And she said to me, "Mr. U.S. Attorney, I'll never be able to describe for you exactly how I felt the night that my son was admitted, but I knew that if his ticket was picked out of that barrel, that was the difference between him going to college or going to jail." From a mother in one of the wealthiest states in America, from a mother in a school district that spends $24,000 per pupil per year, from a mother who believed in her heart that the luck of pulling a ticket out of a barrel was going to be the determining factor of whether her son was going to be a college student or whether her son was going to join the ranks of the incarcerated. That is obscene. It is an obscenity in America today to have that situation be confronted by any parent. It is an even greater obscenity in the state that spends more money per pupil than any state in America on public education. That's what we're here to stop. Now, we know that charter schools are not a panacea and not every charter school is great, but they were never intended to be. Charter schools were always intended to be a laboratory to find out the best ways to develop and nurture and grow a child's intellect. And in some cases, there will be failures, and we will own up to those failures. But there are many more successes than failures, and now is the moment to expand the laboratory experiment, apply the things that we've already learned are successful across the broad spectrum of our public schools, and then open even more of these laboratories to develop even more innovation and more growth in the public education system. Now is not the time to be passive. Now is not the time for retreat. Now is the time for attack and action, and we need to do that together.